Evening, coaches. Welcome to the Locker Room Podcast, Daily Sports. We've got Daniel St Ledger again and Mark Doran, two familiar faces throughout the club season. Very welcome, lads. Very, very welcome.
Thank you, Steve.
Brilliant game of football, lads. So much to talk about. I don't know where to start, but Daniel, probably Glen, over the course of the last year, even going back as far as what they would have felt was a very, very difficult final to lose in those circumstances. Like having beaten Kilmacud, I suppose a massive amount of pressure, Daniel, was on the team today getting into the game. And I felt maybe that they definitely weren't themselves with the amount of ball they gave away in that first half. What was your take on that? And how do you think mentally, that was how difficult that was mentally for the Glen players?
Yeah, it is. It must have been extremely, extremely hard not to let the noise seep in, because it was very hard to see them losing, from the outside anyway. And no matter how much you say, I think we had an experience. Remember that 2017 we played London and we were saying convincing ourselves that it was going to be a tight contest, but there's a history there that lets yourself you get brought into kind of a safety net, and Kilmacud was probably such a big one for them after last year, and that there's probably a massive down after it. So look, a couple of things from the outset. I mean, the fact the game was played at all. I mean, I'm half an hour from Croke Park here, and the windows were coming in on top of me. The weather conditions were absolutely disgusting. And I thought, to be fair to both teams, I thought the quality was really, really good. The first half, I thought it was far too loose from Glen's point of view. I thought they played into Brigid's hands a little bit. Bridges probably sat in and counter-attacked a little bit, and I know we've discussed this before, and we'll probably go into more detail later, but when Glen pushed 5, 6, 7, 8 men into the full forward line, and there was an occasion in the first half where that turnover came, and it was a goal chance for Brendan O'Carroll, and I think Michael Warnock did an unbelievable job with a 2-on-1. He managed to slow both men enough, and that was a massive turning point. But look, it was I thought it was a phenomenal game. I think Glen probably they got out of jail, but there was just big moments at the right times for Glen. The goal we got 1-1 before half time was huge. Conor Glass just deciding to turn into a senior playing under 12s and kind of just take the game by the scruff of the neck and get that goal when they needed it. It was I thought it was a fantastic final. And look, we'll probably discuss Malachy O'Rourke and Ryan Porter a bit more later, but I mean, talk about coaching. I mean, it's easy to go into let's say the Kerrys or the Dublins and win All Irelands, but to have Monaghan where he had them for as long and to have the job he's done with Glen over the last couple of years is phenomenal coaching, really and truly. So hats off to Glen. I think I'm happy for them because after last year I thought they were very good last year as well, and probably deserving winners this year.
Yeah, and Mark, Daniel talked about the weather conditions before the game. I was sort of thinking, this could be a cagey, low-scoring affair, a lot of mistakes. But by God, the players handled the conditions so well, and there seemed to be a strong breeze blowing into the canal end. That's what I was sort of gathering from the TV. But there was some brilliant scores, from Glen in the first half. One from McFall at the top of the D as well was outstanding. But certainly, Mark, with the weather conditions and that, were you surprised with the quality of the game?
Yeah, no, yeah, probably you say yes, but if you think back, I remember even the Ulster final. Remember the day Glen played Scottstown in Athletic Ground? It was a wild day that day too. Now, when I read Croke Park, Glen actually went on the field and they were kicking the ball. It seemed as the breeze was blowing straight down into the hill, and then just literally before the game, it seemed to change into the cross field breeze. But look, come back to the game was absolutely brilliant. And I think if you think of everything, you think of the 1-to-1 defending it had. There was instances I remember Tane and Flanagan 1-on-1 stood him up. Daniel's already made a brilliant block. Daniel's talked about the Michael Warnock holding a 2v1. You thought certain goal. The Cahill Mulholland block, the Ryan Dugan dispossessing Ben O'Carroll down the corner. There were so many good things 1v1, and look, everybody's very critical now, are very quick to critical our game, how poor it is, and say this. I don't care what anybody says. The level of club football this year has been outstanding, and I think now, I know people say, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, football was far better. It's nowhere near the level of football that we're playing at the minute.
Mark, funny you should say that. I had a phone call from a journalist in the Irish Independent there, I'd say way before Christmas, and we was talking about the quality of the game, the state of the game. And, there's a mass hysteria, people coming out and going, oh, it's in a bad place, bad place. But I actually say at the end that club football for me has actually, so as you said, the standards have improved, the coaching has improved, the quality of the games have improved. And senior club teams now are preparing the county teams, but surely the game is evolving a wee bit. And I think this year at the county level, you will see a lot more of sort of man-to-man. I think a prime example of that was last night in the McKenna Cup final, where you had a Donegal team that came out, they played 15 men behind the ball, they decided they were going to sit in, and Derry it was death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah, it was death by 1,000 cuts. And that's not going to work anymore, Mark. That's not going to work.
No, because teams are that well coached now. 10 years ago it was different, 15 behind the ball. And it was like, what do we do now? But teams are that well coached now, getting depth and posting and through lanes and stuff and backdoor cuts. Like it is. And to be fair, look, it just is. The game has now changed. The game, but you're still going to get. Look, I still believe, like, you watch soccer or you watch basketball, and you lose the ball, everybody's a defender still. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You're just making it hard. But the difference is now, when everybody now has the ball, they're going on attack, and I think the game, it's far, far more enjoyable. Like the game
I think as well, Mark. I want your opinion on this, Mark, and Daniel. Right, so I'm not a Liverpool fan, far from it. But I heard Jurgen Klopp's interview there on Twitter or Sky Sports, where he talked about when we played Manchester United, our counter press wasn't where it was meant to be. So he says the following week in West Ham, we counter pressed it. We got this here, blah blah blah. So what he means by the counter press is that when he turns the ball over, he's pressing high and hard straight away. I thought Glen's counter press today, particularly in that last 10 minutes, lads, was absolutely outstanding. Like, whenever they got that ball turned over, there was 4s and 5s and 6s hunting in packs high up the field. And I know, Daniel, you talked about risk and reward, but Mark, that's an element of the game you wouldn't have seen 4 or 5 years ago, because everyone wanted to turn, filter back,
and run back. Yeah, and to be fair, Glen, that's something Glen are really good at. To be fair, the day it took it maybe to the 53rd, 54th minute before they did it. Maybe they were just, I don't know where Glen, look, maybe there was a wee bit of complacency creeped into their play, but it was only in the last 6 or 7, and you could feel in Croke Park their supporters were getting edgy, and it seemed to, whereas in the first 45, it seemed if Glen were just comfortable, not wanting to, as if it was going to happen. And I tell you, actually, like, they kicked four bad ways. Kieran McFall 2, Joey McDermott, and Stevie O'Hara hit a bat. And you've thought then Glen's running out of ideas here. And I tell you what it was. Yeah. Michael Warnock kicked a point from under Hogan Stand that brought them. And Michael, to be fair, Warnock, Spike has been probably one of our best players all year. And the day he got a real toasting, to be fair, he still was brave enough to come up and kick the point. And I think that was a vital score. Good Glen back up, give them a wee bit of lift, because they were a wee bit flat up until that. But see the minute that score, you could just see Glass, they were roaring and squealing the boys to get up there. And then for that next 12 minutes, it just went on a real high press, squeezing. And I think it was 1-3 to score. They got 1-3 out of that, whereas they usually are good at it. But the day it took them a wee while just to get into their stride, where it was complacency, or look, you just, maybe because St Brigid were that good at times, but when Glen did really squeeze, they went after them, like they went and squeezed hard and pressed high, and it looked as got their risk and reward. 1-3 in the last 8 minutes.
Yeah, Daniel, that press that Mark's talking about there, I noticed it again the Glenties in the semi-final of Ulster, Scottstown as well. They've obviously added another. People associate Glen with being defensive, but they're actually not that defensive. They can be defensive. And I watched them in Newry against Kilmacud, where Warnock was superb and Shane Walsh and McFall doubling up. And I thought today, he was probably a bit exposed, and maybe that's a Croke Park factor too, Daniel. It's a harder pitch to play and get cover on and double up. But Ben O'Carroll was sensational, Daniel. I thought he gave Michael Warnock a real difficult day, and when Dugan went on, it was a significant moment. So probably posing 2 questions to you here, like Glen's high press, is that a trait that you think you'll see further in the year from county teams? And defensively, like, would that have been a change you would have made a bit earlier when Warnock was under pressure?
Yeah, I think teams have to have the flexibility to be able to at times sense the energy in a game, and you might need to squeeze high, and then at other times you need to maybe sense, right, we need to sit in a small bit more, and I think that flexibility is probably what teams need to have. Like, every team has to defend, every team has to attack. That's just a fact of the game. You can't avoid either of them. And I think to pigeonhole yourself into one way of playing, as in one way of defending, either way, is probably a bit naive. And I think that's something I love with Glen, and the top teams like Glen and Crokes can do it at times as well, where they'll hit you for 10-15 minutes really hard in your half of the field, and you go in at half time maybe, and you're spending the 10 minutes at half time trying to figure out how to break that press, and then they might drop off you for 10 minutes after half time, and your team talk is wasted. And I think you need that flexibility, and I thought Glen did it really well. But I think I do agree. There was probably maybe not complacency, but there was probably an element of not wanting to lose it early, and I think that didn't suit. I don't think that suited Glen that much, and it kind of led to some nervous turnovers around the middle third, which I think had the knock-on effect then of Warnock and O'Carroll getting left one-on-one so often. So like a lot of the time, your cornerbacks, your fullbacks they kind of get the blame for a lot of these things. But I thought sometimes he was left in an awful lot of space from, it's not silly turnovers, but unusual turnovers, because there's a lot of static ball around the middle third where usually Glen are so good at breaking lines, getting movement across the D, getting movement across the 45. I thought that was lacking a small bit for the first maybe 40-ish minutes. But and credit to him, because it's very hard to get out of that slumber sometimes. When you're in that as a team, it's very hard to switch on that energy that Mark was talking about, and it takes some big moments. Like that block for, about maybe 40 minutes in was huge. Like there was a massive turning point, and you could just feel a sense of energy twisting around. And again, we talked about Dugan going off the last day and Paul Mannion come into the game. Well, when he went on to Ben O'Carroll and he had a turnover on him in the far left-hand corner beside the hill, and it was just a massive energy giver. And we talked the last day about the support cast of Brigid's needing to come up and help O'Carroll, and ultimately in the second half that didn't happen. And I thought Brigid's had their warning against Castlehaven, where good first half and went into retreat mode. I thought they were lucky to beat Castlehaven, and today they didn't get away with it nearly, but they didn't get away with it. And look, it's the big thing there is, I think the Warnock, and you mentioned it, Mark, already. The balls to have that impact on a game, having not had the best of times back in the other half of the field, I think shows the evolution of the footballer. Like your cornerback back then is getting whipped after 40 minutes otherwise, but this lad stays on, he goes up the field and has a massive impact. Like that's
it actually Daniel, probably worked out both ways for them, because when Dugan went on to Ben O'Carroll, it actually freed Warnock up then to get forward, and he is a good footballer. They're all good footballers, and like the two Mulholland's, Mark had an off day. Like Glen had a lot of players who underperformed.
But you have to remember, Mulholland pulled his calf muscle 15 minutes into the game. They started without Jack Doherty. They lost Conor Carville. Like there was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff went again in the day. Yeah.
And also Mark, they're coming off the back of a massive win against Kilmacud. Massive win.
Look, to make no mistake, like 2 weeks ago we were in Uri and we seen their Glen supporters rushing onto the field, and it was like, I know Malachy O'Rourke said in an interview after, there's no cups handed out, but there's bound to be in a Glen man's head thinking, we've done it, and that does maybe, it does seep in a wee bit. Yeah. But look, they were a wee bit flat today. Look, St Brigid, and look, to be fair, if you were a St Brigid's manager all week, it was very easy to motivate. Everything was like, it's a very easy motivation task this week to get your play. Not that you need to get up for final, but like you're going into a final completely written out. I think there were 3-1 outsiders. And look,
I think as well, I don't want to sound more condescending. I don't want us to sound condescending towards St Brigid. St Brigid are a good side, a very good side.
Well, you don't get the Ireland Club final unless you are a good team. But it was probably just
seven or eight Roscommon players. And just something, Daniel, you touched on is interesting, Mark. Like Eddie Nolan, I worked with Eddie for a season. Eddie's a fucking seriously good footballer, and I remember playing Dublin in the National League in 2021, and Eddie marked Brian Fenton. And I'm telling you now, he gave him his fill of it, like, if not more. And Eddie's a real competitive player. Big Canan in the middle, Daniel, as well. And they won a fair few kickouts today in the first half, Mark, and that had an element of putting pressure on the Glen team as well, because they pressed high in kickouts.
You look at Kilmacud, and I think we talked about this here. Like Kilmacud, and I don't probably say this, Kilmacud obviously didn't analyse Glen very well, because the Glen's the one team you can't give the ball to. And to be fair to St Brigid, they went after Glen, the kick out, pressed everything. Yeah. But on the flip side, Glen are really good at pressing the ball. And to be fair, in the last 15-20 minutes, like Conor Glass caught ball after ball, or punched it, or it was breaking. There was Glen players swarming around it. So look, in that sense, both teams done a lot of work on each other. But to be fair, if you're calling the speed, St Brigid's probably 4 up, thought, yes, we'll see this game out. But I do think when Warnock's point kicked the point. The big point was Cahill Mulholland off a black yard, and you thought Glen are down to 14 in the forwards. But he was only on the field. He was only on the field 30 seconds. Game was back to a draw, and the block he made, I think that's the game. That's the point that won the game. He made it. Cahill Mulholland would be a super defender. But we talked about Michael Warnock. Michael Warnock played all the football for Glen at underage at wing half forward, and actually, I think they played Slot Neil in 2019, and they got beat, or getting well beat, and whoever's managing decided to move back to corner back, and he's never been out of there since. So he is he played all his football at Conor Glass, but we mentioned on Ryan Duggan, like, and to be fair, we met Ben O'Carr, like, if you think, we talked about the one-to-one defender, but remember the St Brigid's goal, like Ben O'Carr's, the backdoor cut, like, it's just
unbelievable.
you.
I was just going to come to that, Mark. Watching the game, right? And I honestly, genuinely watching the game, I could nearly see what was going to happen. Like, and it's so hard to defend against because he looked disinterested, was drifting towards the sideline, and then bang, the backdoor cut. And like that's, you can obviously coach that. There's certainly an element, Daniel, that you can coach that, right? But there's obviously, Daniel, as well, a massive instinctive nature in a player of his quality to be able to do those things. Like,
I thought, like, we were chatting about evolution earlier, evolution of the game. Like, I was thinking at the time, just as it was happening, as you were saying, you could almost see it happen. Obviously, we're up high and you can see the spaces and all that. How many times, if you're in a corner like that with probably an offensive underload, would you turn around, come out, and recycle? That's what, like I know myself, all of our teams, if you even got a sniff being on the sideline in the 21, you're turning around and you're getting back out of there. Like, that was never in the British players' heads, like, and you could see O'Carroll could sense it, like, and I think that's a little evolution of the game, and even the goal for Glass, like, there was that element of bravery. The free kick wasn't great, but they took it on, and even Glass shooting from 25 meters out. Again, it's a bit unorthodox. You probably, how many players just kind of chip a point there, like, that sort of way. I think there is.
Daniel, I'd love to watch that back because I actually think Glass actually produced a cut for that move. I actually think he drove towards the sideline and cut back into the space to take the ball over his shoulder on the run, for the goal, like, because the goalkeeper had come out to actually guard the space for the little pop pass into the corner, and then he was caught, and Glass sort of just, played that move. But funny, Daniel, like, about an hour after the match, there was TG Carr was still on the TV, and the two girls were watching it, and there was a ladies basketball match on, and like, it's mad when you look at the movement of basketball teams. It was a high elite game, and you're watching the cuts, you're watching the screening, you're watching, how they overload one side of the attack and then hopefully get the ball across and someone driving to the basket. And Gaelic football has probably learned an awful lot from basketball when you're coming up against zonal defenses and clogged systems, like, and that's obviously something, Daniel, that, lazy coaching is probably, just get your team set up, right, blah, 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 we're back here. But really, really hard to coach is that breaking down an opposition's defense. Would you agree? Like,
yeah, I think so, and it's probably why I think the club game is slightly more on a different path to the county game. Even, like, you see county managers, like, your stage one of when you go in as a county manager is to get a team set up defensively. That's your first building block. Like, it takes probably 2 or 3 years of working on layers of forward play, because forward play is really hard. So you might not necessarily have instinctive forward, so you have to coach, and that can be extremely tricky. Whereas with the club game, like, Malachy's gone into his 3rd year now, obviously dealing with really good players as well. Like, I think it's much harder to coach long term forward play than it is. I think in the county game, it's so cutthroat that you have to just get wins. It's all about wins, where I think there's a little bit more scope for something more to club game. But it's like, I think you're seeing these little nuances, and I don't know, maybe it's the element of the extremely good player in a club team has the freedom to do these things a little bit more. Like, you see Clifford with Kerry, maybe the odd player with Dublin, but they don't care what happens. There's no kind of there's no consequences for them doing something, and you see a little bit more of that with the club. There was shots today maybe that mightn't have been taken on in a Division 2 or 3 league final or something like that, or a championship game, and I think that's only for the better. But it was I thought we saw some, especially in the first half. I thought the forward play from Brigid's in the first half, I thought was top class, and in the second half, I thought Glen's dominance came from a different type of forward play, but it's a kick out press.
Yeah, and Mark, Daniel talked about the forward play at St Brigid's. Like, kicking is obviously a huge important part of St Brigid's game. It's probably in Roscommon football in the DNA as well. They like to kick the ball. The Smiths, the Murders, these guys, like, they're real creative players. It's a style of football that they like to play. But probably Croke Park suited Brigid's today too in that respect. That it's a faster field, it plays faster, and there was some brilliant passes to play. How good, Dorney, is Ben O'Carroll in your opinion?
To be fair, like, the first day we really got a good look at his movement. And look, you'd actually love if you were a club or even an underage team, you'd love to have a video behind the goals or cameraman behind the goals and taking the forwards and just showing his movement. Like, a Michael Warnock, I was looking, sitting in the Hogan stand, middle tier, just looking down. Michael Warnock sitting in 50 yards of space in front of him, 30 each side, and I think he was left with an impossible job. Yeah. And it was just his movement, and like Michael Warnock was doing, it was just Ben O'Carr's movement, like 4 and 5 runs, not one. How often do you see underage players make one run there, don't get the ball to stop? Like his running, spinning, it was just unreal. I actually felt sorry for Warnock. Now, to be fair, a couple of times then Glen did get double up, like but Ben O'Carroll was still coming out with the ball. But to give a different exactive, like when Glen moved after the goal, the backdoor cut the goal, he set the goal up. I think it was for Brian Derwin. He set the goal up right away. Glen made the switch. Dougie onto him. Now Dougie was left still in the same type of space as Warnock. But Dougie, I have seen, I heard before I went down to Derry this year, I heard about this Brian Durgan. I have seen him this year. So like, he has took so many big men out of it. And he won a ball under the Hogan stand. And but you could see that in his face, Ben O'Carroll. He was in his face, he was pumped. And I know if I was Mickey Hart, you'd be doing everything in your power to try and get him in. But it just showed how good a defender he is. But he didn't do as much today. He's also good at driving forward. But like in the first half, St Brigid, I think they've won wide the whole game. Now, to be fair, Glen had a wild lot of bad, very unlikely. Glen's probably are looking their shot efficiency is always up around 75, 80. I would say it was well down today. But look, they still won the game. You have to give them serious character. Like, but Danny Talon was very pretty. Brian Stack, brilliant defender. Danny got it really tight, but Danny came up with one big moment. The turnover down the lane, and that's when the goal come for Glass. Go ahead, Dan.
How, like the value of a defender being able to defend on an island on his own is unbelievable. Like, I mean, if you have 2 or 3 of your full backline who need cover constantly, like that's a worry. Like you could leave Dugan 1-on-1, I'd say, against a lot of players, and be not like obviously you're not trying to hang him out to dry, but you're comfortable that if a breakdown happens, he's going to hold his own up there. He's going to manage. Like, I mean, that frees up McFall, it frees up Lassie up the field. Like, it's such a valuable asset from a coach's point of view. You're talking Mickey Hart. Like, imagine you had Dugan sitting in back, Chrissy McCaig sitting back in there. Right, boys, take out 2. Any 2 counties best forwards. You just do a job on them. Like, I mean, it's such a valuable asset, and you don't see much of it anymore. You don't see many lads that are able to defend in that much space.
No, you don't.
You see lads as well there, like you're talking about just from a defensive point of view, like we're looking at the scores today. I've just got it here in front of me. There's 15 different scores today, lads. 15 different scores. Glen had 7 different scores, including 3 defenders. St Brigid's the same. Fallon from St Brigid's, the right half back. Like he got in for 2 brilliant scores as well. Like the flexibility in football now, and this is something that come back to the whole, doom and gloom that surrounds football. Like 15 different scores. Like, would you have got that, 20 years ago? Would you have got your wing backs, your cornerbacks coming forward? Absolutely not, lads. Like, it does go to show, like, the huge flexibility and the quality of footballers now, lads. It really does.
You know yourself, you were playing, especially in club, and even at county level, like, there's a cornerback, give him the ball, let him have the ball. You can't do that anymore.
No.
You don't, look, for years you just said, let him have the ball, you can't do that anymore. Like, it's just the flexibility of players. Every player is comfortable with the ball, and that's when we go back. Football now is far better than it was 20 years ago.
What's your view, Daniel?
Yeah, no, I agree. And the club championship is interesting because it had the dynamic that every club that's came out of a county has success. Do you know what I mean? So they're coming out of their county having won something. They're not like you go to a championship game where you could have a Division 3 team which had a brutal league playing a mid-tier Division 1 team, and it's only ever going to be one way. Whereas when you're playing your first round of Ulster, second rounds of Ulster, whatever, or Leinster, whatever it is, you have teams that actually have had a really good year. Like, you win a county final, you've had a fantastic year. So I think it adds a different dynamic than you probably get with the county stuff as well. And I just can't emphasize how bad the conditions were today. Like, I've seen a lot worse games in Croke Park.
Yeah.
County games. A lot worse county games at Croke Park with perfect conditions. Like, I can't emphasize how good I thought, like, handling, scoring, kick passing, like I thought it was just on a different level.
St Brigid's hand pass in the first half was exceptional. Like, every pass was crisp. But the thing about every hand pass was in front of a man to run onto. There was never a pass sidewards. It was never. It was just. I thought their first half, their hand passing was just like off the charts.
Lads, we're obviously going to talk, at greater length about Conor Glass, about the impact of Malachy O'Rourke and Ryan Porter. But I think it's important. You mentioned him earlier, Mark. There was a great interview with Brian Stack before the game. A real gentleman, a real proper, a real diehard Kiltoom St Brigid's man. I just listened to him before the game where he talked about the St Brigid's team that won in All Ireland, and he was watching it as a young boy and stuff. And like, how difficult, lads, is it going to be for those lads to lift themselves? Now, the one consolation, I suppose, and it's probably not the night for them boys to talk about it, but the last three beaten finalists have come back to win it the following year. I think we're talking about Kilcoo lost to Corofin and then came back and beat Kilmacud. Glen were beaten by Kilmacud and came back to win it. Who was the third team?
It was Kilmacud, Kilcoo, and Glen.
Kilmacud, Kilcoo, and Glen. Apologies, yeah, Kilmacud, Kilcoo, and Glen. So you're sort of looking at, yes, because Kilcoo beat Kilmacud, you're right, and then Kilcoo or Kilmacud beat Glen. Sorry, apologies. So there's probably a wee bit of sort of solace in the fact that they were brilliant in Roscommon. They absolutely destroyed Corofin in Connacht, playing a great brand of football, and surely they'll be back. Well, will they? They'll be back.
Well, look at their age profile. You'd say they'll be back. And that's the first time I've seen Brian Stack up close in a long time. Like he's just again, you're talking about that 1-to-1 defending. He's brilliant at it. But look,
Mark, you're talking about Warnock. Brian Stack won the Sigerson Cup with DCU playing wing forward. Right, and Evan Comerford was the goals, because I remember saying to him before he played Dublin, and Comerford Cluxon had retired that year, Daniel, and I remember saying to Stacky, you played with him in college, and he was like, look, more or less, Comerford used to say, just move and I'll find you. You know, Comerford obviously had that arrogance, that swagger, but he was playing wing forward. He says all we had to do was move. So he's gone from wing forward to full back and has become a fucking really, really impressive full back, Daniel. Really impressive.
I'd say he's a nightmare to mark. Like, I mean, he's got athleticism nearly of a midfielder, and he's very comfortable in the goal as well. And like, as Mark has alluded to, a couple of Glen lads, very comfortable kind of getting forward as well. Like the first play today, he was up in the full forward line. You know,
he scored. He put them in front.
Like he's just a really competent footballer. You know, and going back to the age profile, it's interesting. I think consistency of management would probably be a big thing for Bridges. Like it's keeping the same thing going, because they clearly have a nice recipe for success. Like if you have a different management team going in there trying to put their own stamp and do different things, like I was thinking of, let's say, Crokes this year, they could have a new manager and they're starting from scratch again, and you go back to everyone on trial. You know, you're kind of starting from the bottom of the hill a little bit. But the age profile thing is really important for Bridges, like, because I think they did show a bit of naivety throughout the year in the games I saw. That comes with being younger players. Like, I mean, that's only something that'll come with experiences. And as you said, like every losing finalist for the last 2 years has came back. So I don't see any reason. Like, again, a lot depends on the draw. I mean, they definitely had a nicer route to an All-Ireland final than, like, you look at what Glen went through this year. Like, Jesus Christ, I mean, the game that come through, even like getting out of Derry and getting out of Ulster, like, was absolutely attritional. And then you face Crokes for your treat coming out of Ulster.
I suppose Daniel will talk about that, right? And Donny, let's talk about this then. So how many games did Glen, this year, Glenty's last minute, last kick of the game, Emmett Bradley, Scottstown, 2 down, get into the stretch, pulled it out of the fire. Coming into the game against Kilmacud, obviously, it's in the mix. All of a sudden, Kilmacud out of nowhere are level, still come back in, and there's injury time, kick 1-1. Like, so there's got to be an element of psychology in that. Okay, there's got to be an element of mental toughness, but there's also got to be a huge element of physical fitness as well, and the job that Ryan Porter has done from a conditioning point of view, which was noted today by Captain Conor Carville on the steps.
Yeah, look, the boy, and to be fair, I know from talking to a couple of Slotneil boys, the county boys, they would tell you that Glen boy Porter, like, is just off the charts. He's unreal. I remember the first time I came up again him was, he was in with Brian McIver for 2 years with Donegal, and that's the first time I ever hear tell of him. And then, to be fair, he looked Malachy O'Rourke, then took him in the Monaghan, but just always sticks to me when I'm talking to the likes of Shane McGuigan or Chris or Brent Rogers, will always say Conor Glass says this about Porter, or says this or says this. And to be fair to Malachy O'Rourke, you listen to Malachy O'Rourke in an interview, he never does an interview without referring to Ryan Porter. And look, to be fair, it doesn't come by accident. In the last 10, 12 minutes, they're still going strong. And look, even the Derry Championship this year, they played 7 group games. Then they always seem to finish strong, and they're going strong at the end. But to be fair, he has got them just at the right time. And look, the record speaks for itself. And when you hear players referring to him just as a genius, best coach in Ireland, look, and I think that speaks. The thing I think, like, Slotneil and Glen would be rivals, but Slotneil players would be telling me that the Glen boys how good Ryan Porter is. And look, to be fair, you can't argue with the record he has. And the players.
Sorry,
you hardly ever hear him talking there. I don't know if I've ever seen an interview from Ryan Porter. He just seems to.
Yeah, I know Ryan McMenamin described him, and it sort of kick-started his probably his profile. Ryan McMenamin described him as one of the best coaches in Ireland when he was with Dromore, Mark, and that obviously probably kick-started, you know, his profile. But Daniel, just on what Mark said there, he struck up a great relationship with Malachy, and you know the two of them obviously have worked very closely together. Malachy's very placid, very calm. You know, he seems to be a man that's hugely respected. He seems to be a man that's in control and a very knowledgeable man in the game as well. But obviously having that relationship and that dynamic in any management team, Daniel, is important. Would you agree?
Yeah, and they don't last if you're if you're not getting on well, you don't last as long as those.
And sorry, Daniel, sorry for cutting your word. Probably the word trust. You know,
Yeah,
there's a huge element of trust with each other. You know,
absolutely. Like I'd say they're probably both of them are like the one mouth almost when they're talking. You know, I'd imagine they'd be saying a lot of the same things, and whether it's tactically or in drills or whatever it might be. Like I think it's pivotal to an overall group because especially from, let's say, Malachy's always head man, let's say. I mean, even if that he's not going to try and refresh and find someone new and develop a new relationship, like I can imagine it's quite tough trying to go into a group of players as it is, a new group of players, without having a new coach or a new selector or whatever it is. And like I've been learning about it the last couple of years. I mean, you have your own way of doing things, like you really do, and not everyone aligns themselves with it. Like, and it might just be the small little intricacies of your how you deal with players, or maybe standards you might have. Like different coaches will have different standards, and I think like Malachy comes across as a manager that I think I want to play for. I think he controls himself, how he handles himself in the media. There's no bullshit. There's no limelight. Like same with Porter, you don't really hear a whole lot from him. I know you would have tried to have a cut off him down in Carlow in 2017, but like he doesn't rise to that kind of stuff, you know. But no, I think they're fantastic. There's a relationship there, and as you say, trust is huge, and it shows. I think it shows, and I think players have a real respect for them, and I think that comes across. And ultimately, like when you can have tactics and all the rest of it, and your systems, but if your players aren't playing for you as a manager, as a coach, as a selector, whatever it is, if that dynamic isn't working, doesn't matter what you have. And I think you can very clearly see there's a fantastic dynamic between players and management, and you could see that in Monaghan as well. Like, I mean, he kept the same group of lads absolutely dying for that jersey for years, like which is, I think, is a really good sign of the man, you know. So he's I think he has to be up there as one of the top end coaches, both Porter and let's say as a group, because you don't stay in the game this long as it evolves and be as successful as they were unless you really, really know your stuff.
Well, Mark, you've come up against them. Well, we all have come up against them. I suppose, you know, we come up against them, Daniel, as well in 2017. And like, you know, I've spoke to Malachy quite a bit on the phone, and he leaves no stone unturned. And I hope he doesn't mind me saying this tonight, like, but even to the extent of a number of years ago when Paul Falloon was refereeing them in the Ulster Club Championship, and he'd never come across Paul's refereeing style before. He just made a phone call to ask me, like, you know, what do you expect from Paul? Will he let it flow? And like, that's some detail to be getting into, you know, as a manager. And obviously we're all doing it, like, but, you know, he obviously seems to be a very humble man, that he doesn't really care about, you know, what anyone's opinion is. It's just about the group, the dynamics. And even when he was announced today, and I thought there was a great moment, Mark, when Carville was up there and he was singing his praises, and it looked down on him and he was nearly embarrassed with the praise, like, you know. And I tell you the truth, I just think he's a fucking wonderful fella. Like, I think he's a brilliant man, Malachy, like. Brilliant.
Yeah,
man.
but look, I know from the 2 years spent, I remember in Ballybay, and I just remember a conversation with Paul Finlay just couldn't speak highly enough of him. And you think of the record he has, like, he took Tully, I think his first management job was Tully Hurling and Monaghan, third division team, took him to Division 1, left them, went to Loop, who hadn't won a championship in 70 odd years, won a championship, won an Ulster title, left the Loop. I think then he took Monaghan Division 3, won a Division 3 title, won an Ulster title, won Division 2, was beaten in Ulster final, took them to Division 1, won an Ulster title, and then kept them there for 3 more years. Left Monaghan, went to, I think it was Cavan Gaels for a year, won a league, then went to Fermanagh, probably the closest Fermanagh ever got to winning an Ulster title, and they're beat by our man a replay. And now he's ended up in Glen again, didn't win a championship. Now, I know Glen had the players, you need the players and stuff, but he just seems, wherever he goes, it seems to be a wee sprinkle of gold. And I do believe, and I noticed, I do believe he will manage Tyrone next season if things don't go well.
You've said that before, and you know that's obviously for another show. We're gonna go into a National League podcast in a few weeks, hopefully, which will be brilliant for the coaches in the Daily group. But It's maybe not a night for writing the obituaries for Logan and Dooher just yet, like. But
yeah, but look, to be fair, but go back to Malachy O'Rourke. Just his
but no,
CV
but I know, Mark, exactly what you're saying. Look, put it like this, Mark. If the down job was available, like, Jesus, you would love a man, you know,
and
like
there's,
county, like, you know.
I don't believe. Well, Daniel said one of the. I think at the minute he's up there with the top 4 or 5 managers ever.
Well, he is unquestionably. He is.
Just what he.
Yeah.
And I know that
Yeah.
like, I know we come up against him this year in the semi-final of the Dairy Championship, and at half time it was 3-2, and it was hot and heavy. I learned the line, and maybe it was behind I learned that.
Mark, you're normally very quiet and placid along the line. Boy, what happened?
You were hot and heavy at that.
Just a wee bit, Paul. But I always just remember an interview after he'd done an interview after. Maybe I was hot. There's always learning. And at half time, I remember I was probably hyped, and I went into the change room and hyping boys too. And maybe I just remember after the game, Glen won the game by 2, and I remember after interviewing, he says, "Look, it was time for calm heads." And like there's a learning. There's not only learning for players, but there's learning for managers and coaches and everything. And it just.
That's an interesting one there you say, right? So I don't want to go off track because we've got a couple of wee things I want to talk about before we wrap up, right? But I was down to Tipperary yesterday. I was driving down and listening to 2 podcasts, right? And one of them was Roy Keane's podcast. And he talked about him and Gary Neville. He talked about how Alex Ferguson didn't go into the change rooms an awful lot. Okay, he didn't go in, and he might have come in and ranted and raved after the defeat, but he didn't go in an awful lot, Daniel. And he left it to a lot of player empowerment, right? And he says, like, you used to stand up, Roy, and speak. And he was like, I didn't really say too much. I just used to say, remember who we are, remember what we represent. We're Man United. And I suppose like it helps us well massively in a changing room when you have leaders like Warnock, like Glass, you know, like Bradley, like real leaders. Like, and that's a massive advantage in any changing room. But is it, lads? And this is the question I have, because obviously coaches in the group are going to be listening to this tonight. Do managers and coaches maybe spend too much time in the changing rooms and too much talking? Like, it's an interesting one. You know,
yeah, I would. Depends on the group. Depends on the group. I think it depends. If you have a leader, 4 or 5 good strong leaders in there, yep, you can spend less time. But you know yourself, you go into a group maybe and it's very, very quiet.
Yeah,
you know, there's places. I just think it depends on the group.
What's your opinion, Daniel?
I've kind of touched on this before, and I think when, as a manager, you go into a group, you have to see who are the people who lead the group. So who do the rest of the group follow? So in any group setting, whether it's a classroom, whether it's in a team, you'll probably have 3 or 4 lads who set a tone for the rest. Now, those 3 or 4 lads could be setting a really good tone, a la Conor Glass, let's say, for example, or they could be, let's say, setting a tone that might be of negativity, or they could be setting a tone that could be completely off script. So you have to know very quickly what you're dealing with, who you're dealing with, and what is going to be said. So, like, let's say you will use that example, Mark, of your game, and you're going in a point down, and something was obviously working for you for that first half, that you were keeping it nice and tight. Some, let's say, leader in your group who you leave off to have a chat to the lads, say, "Here, boys, fuck it. Let's just go all out. Let's just go off script totally. Let's go push up and kick outs. You can see 2 goals in the first 10 minutes of the second half, game over." So you have to be very aware of who you have, and I think this is probably Glen's big advantage. I've said this about Conor Glass before. He looks, there's a humility about him. I think he looks like he totally understands the game at certain periods in the game. So like when he needed a goal, he was able to find it. When he knew he needed to get back and defend, he was able to get that. And I think that's a sign of a really good leader. So I'd say a lot of what Malachy can do is give him responsibility, because he knows he's going to echo what he's thinking. Whereas you could have a different group and your leader could be number 1 trouble, you know?
Yeah, lads. I go back to Doran. You would know this young lad, Conor Clark, from Unraked, and I took him down to the All-Star trials years ago. Clarky 26 now, is he 25?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
26, 10 years ago, and Glass was playing in the same trial, and he was only 17. And I just remember even just the swagger of him, the way he played, the confidence, Daniel. But what you said there, Daniel, the humility, there was no ego about him. You know, he seemed to be a very level-headed lad. And I would say Australia probably even harnessed that even more, Daniel. You know, professional lifestyle, living the right way, looking after himself. This is probably a nice way to sort of conclude the show tonight. We'll have to talk about Conor Glass. Like, he is a sensation since he's come back from Australia. Like, I had a bit of a Twitter discussion with a couple of boys about the influence he's had back at the Ulster final last May, and then I popped up again in December and I said, look, you know, the same man still popping up with big moments. Without doubt, in my honest opinion, lads, he is the most influential footballer in Ireland right now, Mark. Right now.
Yeah, look, and to be fair, a couple of years ago, I might have said, I don't see him doing enough. I know last year been involved with Clare twice. We played Derry. It's the stuff he does off the ball, and then I know this year with Slotneil, the stuff actually he does that no one sees come back and covering. But if you think just even this year for Glen, the amount of big moments he's had, Glen struggled. Kilmacud brought the game back to draw. Conor Glass is Emmett Bradley got one a free. Emmett Bradley the free under the stand Park Esker. Conor Glass is squealing. And everybody get up the field, we're going to press the life out. Kilmacud short kick out. Who makes a turnover? Conor Glass, ball in net. The day, 2 or 3 balls. There's one ball he caught, and I think he near took the head of Emmett Bradley. And then what that next ball, big break, punched it forward, break. There's one couple of interceptions he made. The goal, he just looked at he is at the minute the most. And look, he just has everything. You think at the point he kicked in the first half, even coming down the Cusick stand, right foot, turned on his left foot over the bar. He's just, look, he has everything, and he would be a manager's dream. It would be a club, any player's dream. He's a base of a man, and look, he's a sort of player. If you're going to the trenches, you want a Conor Glass way, and you just know he has your back. He'll do anything, and look, to be fair to him, he deserves everything he gets, because at the minute he is the out and out standout midfielder in Ireland.
But Daniel, even his interviews, they're phenomenal, and he's such a humble guy. Like, I go back to the Kilcoo game 2 years ago in the Ulster final, where God knows what was said and done to him, but he came out after it, and
they wouldn't say nothing to anybody. Now you're exactly.
But he came out after it. He says, "Look, I think it was Aisling O'Reilly. I think it was Aisling at the time said to him, off the ball. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and it looked a bit personal." And he says, "Look, I don't want to go into that, but some of those things that were said there today, look, it's, I don't really want to go into it." But he could have easily come out and let loose and stuff, but he just kept his dignity, kept his humility. Probably, you could probably say he's a terrific loser as well as a winner. And I don't mean that like this spouty, but he loses with grace and he wins with humility, and I think that's just a sign of a real top person, isn't it, Daniel? Like, real top guy.
Yeah, I think so. And like 15 years time, I put my house in a managing Derry and being an extremely good manager. Like, I think he's a leader of people. You can see it by him. Like, I'd say he's an on-field coach as it is already. But like Mark talked about moments, I mean, there was times you were looking at him doing things and you're like, Jesus Christ, that's not Ireland final. Like, I mean, the goal just reminded me of a really big under-12. Like, the way he caught the ball wasn't great, like, but he caught the ball, right? Just brushed off one lad, burst through a second lad, and just rattled it from about 25 meters. Like, it was literally.
I actually think it was Big Canan, the midfielder, who was going to tackle him, and like, he's a big man, man, and he wrapped him around here, and he just, as you say, and the composure to strike the ball. And Daniel, 100%, he was striking that ball with the outside of the foot towards that corner because the keeper was going the other way.
Absolutely. And even, as you say, even the spot the keeper was a little off centre because he was out marking space. Like, I mean, and
Daniel, no fist pumping, no just the crowd, nothing, just straight out job, next job, phenomenal.
I think it's interesting even having one of your influential players in the middle of the field. Like, I was just thinking as we're talking there, like, let's say Clifford is a massive influence on Kerry, but an influence in a very different way, like a corner forward's influence. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I think Glass sees the both sides of the picture in the game. Let's say corner forwards with the best will in the world, right? No different to cornerbacks. Corner forwards want the ball and they want it up that half, and they don't particularly want to be tracking back and all the rest of it. Cornerbacks want loads of cover, loads of numbers, safety. He's in the thick of everything, and he's able to sense. I think that game sense, I know I keep repeating myself, but the game sense he has.
You're right. No, you're completely right. Mark, you've seen him up close in the Derry Championship this year. Tell me this, Mark, right? I did a piece for the Gaelic Life last year after the Cork game in the Championship. Me and the wife were at the Cork game. Do you remember they played Cork and Croke Park? It was a double header with Dublin Mayo.
Yes.
Double header with Dublin Mayo. I just thought his positional sense when they lost possession was on a different planet. Now, I was sitting up behind the goals and I was just watching him. I was watching Derry's shape more than anything. And he always seemed to be the +1, but he also seemed to be the man that was doubling up. He also seemed to be the man that was turning the man over. It's just awareness to be where the danger is just on a different scale. And Mark, he had some big turnovers in that game today. I'll need to watch it back, obviously, because I watched it from an entertainment perspective. But I would say if I watched that back, he was probably doing little things. And as the great John Wooden used to say, the small things make the big things happen. And all those small things that Glass contributes, it just adds to the bigger picture then.
Yeah, it's just, but go back even to that Kilmacud game. It's big moments and big games. Like, and it's not just one game; it's every game. even last, going back to the Ulster final this year, the whole thing with Derry, Rory Gallagher, like he cut 2 balls out of him on the top of the D when Armagh were coming heavy, and he just seems to do. He's a big player. He does. It's not even that they're big. He does the simple things maybe really, really well, but at their big times in games when they need. And look, to be fair, Glen were struggling today badly. He grabbed the game in the scruff of the neck. He was the boy dragged them back in. But I think that would give. I do think we didn't mention about Conor McGuckin. I know it wasn't the greatest ball, but it was a. How many times would you played that ball at that time?
Yeah.
Look, he maybe, but he looked up, he seen it, and he went for it. Now, to be fair, it wasn't a great ball, but Conor Glass looked made it. And I do remember you putting that tweet up. I'm thinking, Jesus, I don't think he's as good. I think he's good, but not. But it was only this year seeing Clare playing Derry twice, and then being involved with Slotneil, and just seeing him, and just got like massive fan. He just
don't never ever doubt me, boy. Never ever.
Ah,
doubt.
look.
Well, here, tell me this quickly, right? Transfer market in the GA, quick one. A prime Fenton or a prime Glass, Daniel? Who would you sign? Different type of player, but you know.
Yeah, and in different teams as well. Like, I mean, Fenton on the front foot probably with Dublin an awful lot of the time. Fenton still is different level. Like, I mean, his record speaks for itself. You know, the All Ireland's kind of back that up. What a fucking stupid question. Why don't be annoying me with those fucking questions? Like,
Mark, you're not sitting the fence. If you had to pick one, Mark, who would you pick?
At the minute, Conor Glass, for one, physicality. The physicality he brings to the game.
Yeah. Well, here, lads, listen, we're going to wrap it up. Before we wrap it up, I think it's a worthy mention of Cawley. I thought he had a brilliant game in the middle, Daniel. I thought he was brilliant today. I think he's one of the best referees. I watched him last year when he was refereeing Roscommon and Cork. He lets the game flow. He uses common sense. Now, I remember a referee saying to me, not a referee, sorry, one of these bloody assessors or something. And I remember the assessor saying to me one night when I challenged him about a certain referee, common sense doesn't exist in the rules, and you're going, mother of God, like this is what you're dealing with. Like, but just having that wee bit of common sense, letting the game flow, not blowing silly things. You go back to last night watching the McKenna Cup final, Conor Kern refereeing the game, spotting the foul 80 meters away and running in and blowing the whistle and creating melees, and you can just see the experience of Cawley today. Really, really top class, Daniel. His
trajectory followed mine. So he would have started out in Division 4 of Warren Cup games back in maybe 2000 and I can't remember, 12, 13. And one thing that always stood out for me was, like, we were Division 4 nobody's, like, but he knew most of the players by name. And it was a small thing. It was a really small thing. But when he was talking to it, we'd say, look, Daniel, that was for a pull in the jersey. And you couldn't really argue whether you agreed or disagreed. You're like, okay, fair enough. He's explained himself. And I think you can see that, like, players very rarely got irate with him today. And I think that's because of his mannerism, you know. I will say one thing for him, though. The free at the end that he gave Ben O'Carroll to level it, or was it to get him back to win?
Yeah. The point.
That was soft. I thought that was soft.
The one to get back within a point.
Yeah.
Oh, not the last one was the last one was.
And come here, let's just for a second talk about that. Cynicism still works, boys. Like, like, put it this way: if that's a 21-yard free for a pull down, that's a draw game. He doesn't do it. You know, I'd have been up on top of him. I'd have been dragging him down by the ears as well. Like, don't get me wrong.
You might have had I've seen you put a wee hand across a man's face before.
Actually, look, you were coaching that kind of crack. Like,
Use two negative boys.
But Mark, on a serious note, though, Mark, Daniel hit a very, very important chord there, and I noticed it last night, boy. Like, I'm not getting a Conor Kern here, right? Connor's a down referee. I'm not getting him, but like, I was watching Conor last night at McKenna Cup final, and just even the way he was handling players and pointing at them, and you know, and you're just going, that's an experience. Like, it was his first big game, and you look at Cawley today, as Daniel says, like, knowing the names. Like, if you're playing Mark and the referee says, Mark, you're just a wee touch late there, you're gonna have respect. Like,
automatically. If a referee called, like I said, I couldn't. I'm a big fan of Brendan Cawley. I actually love him refereeing. I think he's a brilliant referee. But it's a wee bit of respect both ways, and it can't be. The teacher pupil. Sometimes I hate a referee. Yeah. Some referees, I know I actually said this to a referee 5 or 6 years ago. You remind me of somebody who was bullied at school and they end up. I hate it's now he's talking to. I hate that sort. I like a referee just a bit, and players even along the line of a referee respect. If a referee's respectful to you, you be respectful Absolutely. Back to him. But Absolutely. I hate the referee that usually this pointing that's nearly like you nearly think there's more referees than enough. And look, it's the worst job in the world, but there is some referees I think he definitely was bullied at school. He's out here now to get his 10 years.
Yeah. Well, here, lads, listen, thanks a million. That was absolutely brilliant. It's been great to look back in the club season. You know, we're kicking off another season now. Obviously, the county season. It starts next week. Mark, all the best with your role with Wicklow. Obviously, big challenge for you to stay in Division 3. I'm sure that's the target and the goal. You know. And Daniel, what's your take then? Like just a wee quick synopsis then next week. Like, who's your shakers and movers? Who do you see? Who do you see at the top of one? Who do you see coming out of two? Just quickly there, maybe.
I don't know. I'm 1 and 2 isn't really where the battle is at for the league. I don't think. Like, I mean, it's as Mark said, or as you're saying about Mark, like it's down 3 and 4 where the real grunt will happen. Like, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see where Dublin are at with a full squad again. They're always interesting to see. You've got the Donegal element, definitely Derry element when the boys come back as well. Like, that'll be interesting to see Mickey Hart, Jim McGuinness, see how that goes. Like, you've a lot of new managers, so there'll probably be. I wouldn't expect a wild league, to be honest with you. I think it could be a bit slow to get up and running, but looking forward to seeing what Donegal do. That's just the interesting one. Everyone wants to see.
They were poor last night, Daniel. They were poor last night.
Again, would you? I don't know.
Wouldn't be reading too much in it. Mark, looking forward to the new challenge.
Yeah, look, to be fair, it is a challenge. Look, make no mistake. It's
difficult. We know ourselves. Like
if you can stay in Division 3, it's a very, very good thing. But it is, look, it's a massive challenge. And I'm a great one. To be fair, I always remember Oisin ringing me months ago. He says, "A boy told me you love challenges," and I says, "I like challenges. I don't like suicide missions." And to be fair, he said to me after talking, look, it's a challenge, but look, the National League, it's sometimes the bookies are wrong. They're not wrong all the time, but sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah, well, tell me this, Daniel. Like, Division 3 is a tough league because every team in it probably feels they can go up, and every team in it probably, could be in danger of going down as well if results don't go for them.
Yeah,
Longford won the O'Byrne Cup. I tipped them this time last year. And I tipped them this time last year, and were they relegated? No, they weren't relegated, were they? They were
relegated last year.
Relegated. So they're in 4 like that. You'd expect them to come out of 4 like.
Well, I think Wexford. I think Wexford's dark horse in Division 4. I seen them a few weeks ago. They've a lot of big, strong players. And Wexford definitely Division 4.
It's a big year for Leitrim too, boys.
Yeah, Leitrim down there too. Yeah. Look, Longford, Tipper. Look, every league's like, and you even look Division 2. I think everybody says Armagh, Donegal. I think Cork won't be for Armagh, Cork, Donegal.
Kevin Walsh another year under his belt.
Yeah, look, and it's a big Division 1. Yeah. Look how, and I do think Monaghan. I know everybody says I think Monaghan's going to struggle this year, especially with Rory Beck. And look, I know Roscommon got a big win last night. It depends how Roscommon started. I think Roscommon play Tyrone next Sunday. The loser of that game is a big trouble. And that's early on.
I'm hearing the word in the street in Roscommon is Kieran Murder's gone. Cian McKeown's gone. Massive blow. Big, strong, powerful forward, strong runner. You'll probably not have Ben O'Carroll next week. You'll have no St Brigid boys next week. Them boys will not be able to lift themselves next week, like, so it will be difficult for them. But lads, listen, thanks a million. We'll maybe get together for a National League show, whatever, if you're free and you have a bit of time to spare. But thanks very much, and well done to Waddy Graham's, and congratulations to them. And it's, I suppose, to finish, Mark, do you remember in 1984 where Tony Scullion's talking about 3 Mahara was black? Well, I'll tell you what, it'll be black tonight, I'll tell you.
I'm down this Neil Lamar night, so I'm just going to have to go around the back road.
You'll be in the middle of it.
I'm going to the back road. I wouldn't drive in there because my let the car break down or something.
There'll be a video of you in the middle of the celebrations, but
well, that's definitely not happening.
All right, lads. Thanks a million, lads. Thanks a million. Thanks, boys. Good.
Bye.